Hi, everybody. It's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we're back again today to talk about another Star Trek book. Can you believe it? I know. It's something we rarely do on this channel, right? But no, today we're going to talk about Before Dishonor. Another great one by Peter David. This is set in the kind of the relaunch era, of which, I've only read a few, I think. Maybe three, the Destiny trilogy, and like the Titan stuff. But as far as the actual Enterprise stuff, this is kind of new to me, so this has been fun, and it has been an interesting one to say the least. If you are a fan of Peter David's writing, then you're going to get right into this. There is a lot of silliness in it. It is it is kind of outrageous, but I was enjoying the whole ride. Basically, I was right there for the outrageousness. I was loving it and was just right along for the whole thing as it got crazier and crazier. And the book also kind of picks up the a story that happened previously where I've not read this one either, and I didn't look into it to see which one it was, but Picard wins some victory over the Borg, goes against Starfleet Command in the process, but in doing so defeats the Borg and leaves this kind of giant cube, and that's kind of how things get started here. So it's a big one. This is coming in at a total of 407 pages, which after reading the little kids ones, the young adult novels, it was nice to get my sink my teeth into a nice big one here. So as you can see, we are rotating our covers because that I think is maybe the one from Czechoslovakia. I'm not sure, but I really like the next one, which is the one from the German cover, Heldentad, right? I think that's a very cool cover. So we'll just let the three rotate here as we talk about the book. So, all right, from the back, we have a lot. An enemy so intractable that it cannot be reasoned with. The entire race thinks with one mind and strive towards one purpose, to add our biological distinctiveness to their own and wipe out individuality, to make every living thing the Borg. In over 2 centuries, the Federation has never encountered a greater threat. Twice Starfleet assembled and threw countless starships to stand against them. The Borg were stopped, the price paid in blood. Humanity breathed a sigh of relief, assuming it was safe. And with the destruction of the transwarp conduits, the Federation believed that the killing blow had finally been struck against the Borg. Driven to the point of extinction, the Borg continue to fight for their very existence, for their very culture. They will not be denied. They must not be stopped. The old rules and assumptions regarding how the collective could act have been dismissed. Now the Borg kill first, assimilate later. When the Enterprise manages to thwart them once again, the Borg turn inward. The dark places that even drones never realized existed are turned outward against the enemy they have never been able to defeat. What is revealed is the thing that no one believed the Borg could do. Dun, dun, dun. That's actually a very cryptic and long back cover thing. I like that. That's pretty good. It doesn't give away any of the fun that you're getting into in this book. So, and again, I will say it's a wild ride. You have a lot of moments in the book where you're thinking like, what? Okay, let's go with it, Peter David. We're just going to go with it. But it's just such a fun ride that again, the silliness and the kind of the outrageousness of the story, they kind of fit right in, and it's fine. It goes along perfectly fine. So, all right. Well, if you don't want to be spoiled, you can hightail it right now because we are going to get right into it. First off, I mean, you can tell by the cover, obviously. This is a Next Generation book, but this is a 7 of 9 book, fully. I would say. I mean, she is definitely the star and the lead of the book. And then after that, it is a Captain Picard, and then surprisingly Spock, as you can see there. And then they put him on the cover of that one, to try to draw in those Spock fans, right? Get those Spock and Seven fans in. So an interesting combination, right? And of course, Janeway is in this. And just to go ahead and spoil it right off the bat, the beginning of the book, Janeway gets assimilated by the Borg and becomes the new Borg queen. basically, right? And it's a very interesting way that it happens as well. So, um, should we just get right into it like that? Yeah, I guess so. Basically, um, like I explained earlier, this Borg cube was defeated and now hangs lifeless in space. And they're kind of like, it's kind of weird. It almost seems like maybe they drew some of Picard season 1 from this, right? Because they're exploring that they got that Borg cube there too that they're, experimenting on and stuff. But anyway, they're checking out this Borg cube that they think is dead, and Janeway is going out there to check it out, and it's been kind of confirmed to be dead, and there's no activity there. But then when Janeway gets there, she gets assimilated into the Borg cube, but not in your typical, assimilation tubules fashion into the neck. Like she basically gets pulled into the cube itself, and it's kind of explained that the while the drones and everything on the cube was dead, the cube itself kind of like brought itself back to life. So it's almost like this whole kind of different form of Borg, almost. Um, so anyway, they absorb Janeway, they absorb and they assimilate the ship that brought her there, and that kind of sets things in motion. Then, once that happens, Seven of Nine, she feels that that something is wrong with Janeway, so she reaches out to Starfleet to do something. Admiral Jellicoe says no. Janeway says everything's fine. Of course, she's just playing. She'd been assimilated already, right? So she has to find a different way to get out there to the cube to see what's going on, and in comes Grim Vargo, typical and perfect Peter David character, right? I love the name. I love the character. Very interesting. This kind of rogue captain, who's going doing these odd jobs and things like that, and he picks her up for transport. And I won't get into the whole thing because there's just so much. I'll let you guys kind of get into that yourselves. But basically, he takes her there, but finds out that there's nothing that she can do there, and she needs to meet up with Picard, right? So this is when the whole kind of the plot comes together. She meets up with Picard, who is on Vulcan currently, and he is on Vulcan attending the opening of the Sarek School of Diplomacy. And he expected Spock would be there, and Sarek's wife's like, well, Spock couldn't come or something. But then later on in the day, Picard's at the School of Diplomacy, kind of checking it out after the crowds leave, and in walks none other than Spock. So, yeah, again, you got Spock in this, you've got Seven, and you've got Picard. That's like the trifecta of Star Trek, right? So, anyway, it's basically kind of brought to Picard's attention what's going on, that they have to stop this cube and this new queen, right? And they're the first time that they encounter, I think they send Starfleet sends like a ship out to check on them, make sure that things are on the up and up, or are they really assimilated? Is it really active? And they find out for sure that it is really active, and their new way of assimilating is basically just to ram right into a starship and then just kind of suck it into itself. And then just imagine the cube as it sucks the starship in, just whoop, gets a little bit bigger. And it gets a little bit bigger. It gets a little bit bigger. It kind of keeps eating as it eats through these fleets and things. So it's it's a new way to look at the Borg assimilation, and kind of a really freaky way too, honestly, because just I don't know, it's a kind of a scary thought that they don't have to destroy your ship or anything like that. Basically, now they just have to run into you, and they just pull you right in, basically. Ding dong. Anyway, doorbell distracted me. What are they gonna do? That's kind of where they're at. Basically, they get the report from the starship that got sucked in. They see again, Grim Vargo comes in. He actually kind of records the whole thing and sends it to sends it around to everybody so they can know that the Borg are back, and they can now suck up whole starships. So Starfleet, they send a fleet after them. The fleet gets destroyed immediately. At least I think that's how it goes. But basically, they know that there's nothing that they can physically do as a ship or a fleet to stop this, right? So they have to think of another solution. And Spock is already like, we have to think of the third solution, because the Borg have already thought of like the first and the second solution. So he's playing like 4D chess. He's all the way up here trying to figure out like the final action after the other two that will be anticipated, right? So this is when they come up with the idea that they need to use the planet killer. And this goes back to Peter David's novel Vendetta. And this planet killer was basically designed to kill the Borg. And of course, the big one is destroyed, but there is this prototype planet killer that's at the trophy planet. So it's kind of a long shot plan, but if it works, it would be the way they could do things, right? However, Starfleet is saying, no, you need to come back to Earth, because we're assembling the fleet, and that's going to be our only shot, right? So you have, and at this point too, the Borg cube has started heading towards Earth, right? So now it's like an imminent threat, so Picard has to decide, is he going to obey, or is he going to do what he thinks is right and go get the planet killer and use that? And this is when something very interesting happens in the book, where there is an actual mutiny that goes on. Which I thought was like crazy. Like, who are these people? Well, what do they think they're doing? Do they know who this is? This is Captain Picard here, right? But yeah, he has I believe it's a security officer and another officer and some other ones that, oh my God, his freaking counselor in this case, this Talana, this Vulcan counselor, she was like just rubbing against him every decision he makes. Basically, she's like telling him how wrong it is, right? So she's a very interesting and annoying character, and they kind of all come together to relieve him of command, along with basically the rest of the cast, right? And of course, this is later TNG. Riker and Troy are off on the Titan. First officer is Commander Worf. You've got Dr. Crusher, and her and Picard are now a thing. They're an item, which I think happened in a previous book, right? And you've got Geordi. Did I say that? Anyway, and so not the full complement that we're used to, but you got those four. They get locked up in the brig, of course, with Mr. Spock as well. But Mr. Spock, thinking 3 steps ahead, has already set the ship to automatic, basically, and it's heading towards the trophy planet, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it, right? So it's an interesting situation that they've got themselves into. They take command of the ship from Picard, but they have no control of the ship. Right now, they're on Picard's course anyway. So when they get to the trophy planet, they decide, well, what else can we do? We're going to give them a shot. So they send Spock and Picard and LaForge over in a runabout to the planet killer to see if they can turn it on and do something there, right? Let's cut back to the solar system here as the Borg cube enters it. And again, this is a very silly book. The Borg cube proceeds to eat Pluto. Yes, it eats Pluto, and again, just gets bigger. Now it's massive, right? And it's absorbed multiple ships. So it gets to Earth, and then basically it holds position and says, bring us Picard and 7 of 9. So now Jellicoe is like eagerly trying to get them there. And then the Borg cube has little starship babies that kind of pop out of it. And now it's got like 6 little starship. Imagine like, it looks like a starship, but with the exterior. And I'm also imagining the sharp angles of a Borg cube, right? So that was kind of a fun picture to put in my mind too. So now they send these 2, the Queen, Janeway, sends 2 of these ships off after Picard and the Enterprise, while leaving 4 to kind of guard Earth with the main cube. Okay, so they ate Pluto. Just ate the whole thing, assimilated it. There's no more Pluto. So anyway, back at the planet killer, they're kind of deciding what they're going to do, and they decide that And Spock is kind of interesting in this book too. He has some nice ideas, but then a lot of the time he's just kind of like standing back, like fascinating, you know, just kind of like, well, we have to let things take their course. And so I thought that was pretty funny too. Just and he was kind of frustrating, I think, LaForge at some points too, where he was trying to get something done, and Spock was just like, well, there's nothing we can do, so let's just chill, right? You know. So anyway, Seven kind of hugs this thing, this big crystal, where like basically the source of control is, right, and eventually brings the thing to life, right, and connects with it, and then gets pulled inside of it, and is like in stasis inside of this crystal, but now is in control and is kind of mind melded with this planet killer, right? So these two Borg starships get there, and the planet killer blows them out of the water. No shot, right? The queen back by Earth feels this and is like, she realizes that there's going to be trouble coming now. So the planet killer takes the Enterprise in tow, and now they set a course for Earth, right? Gosh, I feel like I'm forgetting something when sometimes I just get on these long rants and then I feel like I forget a whole plot of the story. But I don't think that I am. I think we're pretty good here. We're following it along pretty good. Anyway, they're going to Earth now. They're going to fight this thing. But when they get there, at first, they have to kind of split up, right? Because they need to defend against these, these other smaller ships, too. There's still the 4 smaller Borgified ships. So they split up, and Picard, who is now made Commodore of this fleet by Mackenzie Calhoun, so the Excalibur comes in for a little cameo at the end. And they have a nice little battle against the 4 Borgified ships, while the planet killer takes on the main Borg ship, right? And at first it's doing great. It's blasting big chunks out of it, and the Borg cube is getting smaller and smaller. But then the Borg queen tricks everybody and pulls a move where she shifts time and space, and she's like, doof, doof, and all of a sudden she's behind the thing, and this thing can't turn around fast enough to shoot it, and now the Borg cube is sucking this thing in. They lost, right? It's like game over. Oh, I am forgetting a plot. This was plan A. Plan B, if this failed, was the endgame virus. And if you remember the episode I, Borg, this was from that, where they were going to send this virus back with Hugh, and it would be a shape that was so an impossible shape. But then once the collective got it into their minds, they would try to make it, and it would basically, make them all burn out or whatever, right? So Seven, she has this virus implanted in her mind, and if everything goes wrong, she's plan B, basically. And now that's happening. So as the planet killer is getting sucked in, Seven quickly makes Spock and Geordi, escape in the shuttlecraft, shoots them out. And I will say a little bit, Geordi was very much trying to save Seven and get her out of the crystal, right? And he had a good part in the story for the small part that he did have, right? And it was a good callback to the Vendetta novel, where he was unable to save the previous pilot of the previous planet killer. So I thought that was interesting too. So in a way, this is kind of like a sequel to that, Anyway, they've lost. The planet killer is being sucked in. The Borg is assimilating all this new technology. They've now got a neutronium hull, basically making them indestructible, right? So it's the end. Everything is done, and I'm the book is you're this is it. There's nothing left. How are they going to turn this around? And it was a very interesting ending, right? And a lot of people might not like it, but I did, in fact. So basically, they lost. They're being assimilated. Seven is being assimilated back into the collective, and kind of the final big scenes in the book are her having this kind of mental battle with the Queen, right? Back and forth, and it is Seven's power of will that enables her to resist assimilation and keep fighting long enough to get through to that little tiny piece of Janeway that was left in there. And then when that little piece of Janeway sees Seven's efforts finally starting to fail as she runs out of energy, then Janeway surges forward, punches a hole through the firewall, right, and allows the endgame virus to, overtake that Borg cube. So then in the end, the cube destructs as it tries to make itself into this shape. And an interesting kind of visual thing too, all the other little Borg starships too were kind of, I kind of picture like Rubik's Cube moving themselves around, trying to make this impossible shape and then eventually self-destructing, right? And Janeway dies. And I forgot the plot. No. At the beginning of the book, Lady Q showed up, and she was basically like, Janeway, you don't want to go to this Borg cube. It's going to be bad for you. At the end of the book, wait, we'll save that for the end. The Borg cube explodes. Picard thinks that everyone is dead. He gets a hold of Spock and LaForge, thankfully. Seven is floating in space, still encased in this crystal, right? And who is she rescued by? None other than Grim Vargo, coming in at the end to save her. So again, a fun character and a fun moment there too. But again, they win. They save the day. Hurrah! The Borg are defeated. However, there's something else. A little lead up to something else going on. The initial little ship that the Borg assimilated first, the one that took Janeway to the cube, it escapes and is off into unknown land to do some unknown thing somewhere, right? And then, final kind of little afterthought here is Janeway in the afterlife. We don't know. It doesn't really say. But talking to Lady Q, and Lady Q's like, we've been watching over you. Q has always been interested in you. You're gonna have to come with me now. And she's like, well, is there coffee where we go? It says, as much as you want. So, and that kind of ends like that. And I did kind of read a little bit. I don't do this normally, but I was interested to see, because I didn't think Janeway would stay dead, and she does come back in a future, I think, Voyager book. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how that storyline plays out, right? Very interesting. Anyway, this has been me talking about Peter David's Before Dishonor. Before Dishonor. Before Dishonor. Thumbnail picture. Anyway, I'm just goofing. It's been fun. See, I can always tell when I've enjoyed a book when I just keep talking about it like this. And it goes very smoothly, and it feels all nice and smoothie, right? And that's what this has felt like today. So this has been fun. So read this book. It's a fun book. It's silly, like I said. You'll know that going in. It's a silly book, but you're in for a fun ride. And if you have read it, let me know what you think. Did you also enjoy it and think it was silly as well? Let me know. Anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out and listening. As always, live long and prosper. We'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.